You're watching Gearwire.com. I'm Owen O'Malley, and we are at the 127th AES conference in New York, and I'm here with John Storyk.
How are you? Thank you.
Obviously, the control room has gotten smaller. That's very dependent on the new digital consoles inside the box mixing. Has the live room changed in those scenarios?
Yes and no. There's always going to be an argument for a big live room. In general, I think they've gotten smaller because real estate realities have forced people to at least try to figure out how to do the same thing. But we're able, we're able to accomplish the same brightness and liveness and naturalness and musicalness, if that's a word, in rooms with less volume because we have some new cool tricks and toys. Diffusion, for instance, developed really in the last 15 years. It's come into its own. Lots of companies making diffusion products. We know a lot about diffusion. We have a lot of modeling. We have prediction tools now. We're able to actually listen to rooms before they're built from drawings. This is called oralization. This is very cool, to listen to a room before it's built.
Do you find that to be accurate enough to do?
Very accurate, and we do it for almost every project. Not everybody does it, but we do it. Sweatshop Studios, very interesting studio in a home, attached to a home. If you just saw the pictures of the studio and looked at the gear, and I told you it was on 48th Street, and it's for sale for $1,200 a day, and it's being booked, the studio room is very, very high, beautiful windows, but in fact it's in a home. So now, is this a prosumer studio? Is this a private studio? Is this a project studio? Amateur hobbyist? At first glance, created by an amateur hobbyist, but soon that amateur hobbyist is slowly becoming not so amateur and not so much of a hobby. So we're able to get smaller rooms to behave in similar fashions to larger rooms. There's never going to be a complete replacement for a super large rooms, but all of a sudden, for instance, Sweatshop Studios, the one I was just referring to, I think that live room is 400 or 500 square feet. It's got some nice height, and this is behaving the way a 1,000 square foot room would have behaved 20 years ago, because we have just some new cool ways of dealing with it.
You attribute that to the technology, the planning technology?
Technology, but I also mostly contributed to knowledge. Yeah, I contributed to knowledge, not so much our knowledge, but just the collective knowledge of our industry. We did a studio for Robert Clavelis. That's one of the C's of CNC Music, and this is a pretty well-known guy who worked for years on really big analog boards, owned his own big studios, and he wakes up one day and he says, I just don't want to do this anymore. I want to do it at home. He also changed his distribution model, and we literally took his garage, left it as a garage, and put a studio in his garage. So this one really is a garage studio. In fact, he calls it Paradise Garage, but when you see it, it's really cool. All digital, Pro Tools, big monitoring system, very accurate room, little tiny vocal booth, and he, in his slippers, he goes to work. Another studio for another famous, pretty well-known producer-engineer, Yaron Fuchs, in Westchester, and we did his studio. He literally kind of built a shed outside of his house.
Do you find that you're building more studios outside of city environments, and what are the different concerns?
Much more out of studio. Yeah, well, along with everything becoming more democratic, the geographic field got completely leveled. There's no more geographic boundary. If somebody wants to do it, they can do it almost anywhere. Now, let's not get too confused about that. There are always going to be some centers of music, and there are always going to be places where musicians want to park themselves, because that's just sort of where they might want to be for a few weeks. And I am at liberty to discuss this. We're doing a private studio for Celine Dion, and that's about all I can discuss, and that is all I will discuss. And it will be in one of her homes. And she will use it to do vocals. And this is a person of mega international celebrity status. But at the end of the day, when you track her next album and you see where it was made in the locations where she is on the tour. And who knows, maybe one of those tour locations, she just had to grab something, she makes it in a studio she never heard of, and then it's remixed in another place, vocals are put on in another place. This is the new model. You look at the back of a lot of albums, you're starting to see 8 locations where stuff was made. It's all and names that you don't recognize anymore. It's all over the place. It got more democratic. It got more leveled, and because it got cheaper and more manageable to do. I'm not saying it got easier, but it certainly got more manageable. It means that more people can do it. So that means we no longer only have to do it in the same 3 centers where everything was done. So yes, the answer is absolutely yes.
Have you ever met a space that you said, no, this has to be knocked down?
Yes. Yeah, not all the time, but some. And you know, when you're young, you don't want to say no to anything. You want to get to work. But now, yes, we see sites. As a matter of fact, we're asked to evaluate sites. I've seen sites where I just know in my heart there's not enough height. That's maybe the biggest single problem. Or I've met a site where, you know, I know you want to be on the second floor, but you really should be on the ground level, which is always better. Or I've been to a site where I said, this is going to be very expensive to get the air conditioning to work because we're going to have a lot of trouble getting fresh air inside. So those kinds of moves, you need a little experience to be able to know that. But yes, we have done that. People pay us to do that. And on the other hand, sometimes a less than perfect site ends up being the site that we have to deal with because maybe there are other reasons, like economic reasons, or someone owns the site, or it has a tremendous location in a particular area, or it has perfect parking. You know, the beat goes on. So then you got to start balancing that. But we have rejected sites.
Okay. Do you think there's like the platonic ideal of a perfect room, or have you ever been asked to build a room for a specific character?
Absolutely. We have been asked to build ground-up rooms with specific characters for specific music purposes, and if left alone, and we have a clean white palette, then we can have some fun. And we do get to do that, and we have been able to do that, but I must say, in today's financial climate, that's usually the norm, not the norm. Most studios seem to end up in existing pieces of real estate, or if they're new pieces of real estate, they're on a site that has restrictions and limitations, because that's just the reality. But, you know, have we ever had a project where, you know, someone's got 4 acres of land and we can do whatever we want? Sure. We have done that. We have had that, and that's fun. And we get to play with that.
You prefer to do that, to build from scratch?
You know, part of me does, because you can get to play real hard, okay? But I also like the ones with the restrictions. Now, here's the interesting thing. The highest learning curve comes from the toughest restriction sites. You get the highest learning curve when you get some real pinching kind of requirements. And sometimes the pinching is geographic requirements, you know, architectural. Sometimes the pinching is money. I mean, people call up all the time and say, you know, we have a limited amount of money. I'm not afraid of tight budgets. I will say no if the budget is unrealistic. And we do get those calls. I mean, we get calls where people are off by a decimal point. They just simply don't know. But the good news is that we get fewer of those calls. Why, you might ask? Same answer as I gave you a few minutes ago. The level, the bar, the education bar is just higher and higher. We got more schools. Almost everybody entering this kind of prosumer, new democratic content creation environment world that we've been speaking of for the last 10 minutes, you'll find that somewhere in the middle of that, someone went to an audio school. There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of good ones. Used to, 20 years ago, you know, Full Sail, University of Colorado, and that was about it. Now, the art institutes, at NYU, almost every university has an audio program, has a technology program. Very sexy, very popular subject, and they do a good job. And one of the subjects that's being taught, not all on the same level of consistency, but is paying attention to acoustics. So the bar is just higher.
The bar is raising for the acoustics programs too.
Absolutely raising. Not all of them, I must say, more people paying mostly attention to production values, but the bar is being raised. And hats off to the education industry in general. And by the way, anybody on Gearwire wants to talk to me, I'm easy to get. Type my name in, you'll get to me. I love educational discussions, and we welcome that, and that's just a lot of fun. That's how it gets better.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have a good show.
Bye.